On behalf of the Animals and Birds Protection Board, Mr. A.G. Ogilvie, KC, Premier of Tasmania, will now officially hand over the Tasmanian Devils to Warner Brothers.
I have very much pleasure in handing these animals over to the special representative of Warner Brothers. And I feel sure that when they reach the zoo at Los Angeles, many people will be very interested in them because of their rarity.
I wish a falling star could fall forever and sparkle through the clouds and stormy weather, and in the darkness of the night the star would shine a glimmering light and hover above our love.
All right, my hearties, follow me!
70 years after he first flashed across our movie screens, people are still talking about Errol Flynn.
Now, this forest is wide. It can shelter and clothe and feed a band of good, determined men. Are you with me?
He came out of nowhere to become the biggest star in the world. But you know what? His films are probably the least interesting thing about him. This is a man whose real skill was the art of living. He had countless lovers, spent his way through millions of dollars, and died broke in the arms of his teenage girlfriend.
He's a tragic figure, he's an admirable figure, he's a walking morality play.
He knew how to live life, and he enjoyed it, and he wouldn't have changed any part of it.
That's certainly the Errol I remember. I worked with him on 4 films and still have the scars to prove it. His sword flew up and caught me on my bare hand, and that is my souvenir, Errol Flynn. And it was nearly severed. But I forgave him, as did most of us. He was just so different from the usual actor. Errol never had a dull day in his life. He sailed every ocean, wrote best-selling books, saw for himself wars and revolutions, found Fidel Castro.
Love of adventure and danger, love of skating on thin ice, love of doing something that was illegal with the possibility of getting away with it. This attitude that I don't give a damn about anything.
I may as well confess that at the age of 12 I fucked a duck.
It all began in Australia, on the island state of Tasmania, known for its rustic scenery, peculiar animals, and, well, Errol Flynn. Errol's father, Theodore Thompson Flynn, was a man of learning, a professor at Tasmania's only university.
His father was an admirable man, intelligent, brave, committed to scientific research, had a distinguished career.
A biologist, Professor Flynn collected rare specimens for the Tasmanian Museum. Father and son would go bone hunting together.
Errol speaks about having gone with his father to pick up these, to collect these specimens. I guess they knew where animals were buried and went and dug them up. He had a great interest in marsupials, and it appears he had a big interest in carnivorous marsupials. He was certainly very interested in Tasmanian devils.
The Tasmanian devil, entirely confined to the island. A flesh-eating mammal that hunts by night.
In different ways, both father and son became experts in the mating behavior of predatory males.
The father, a very handsome man, a very intelligent man, a womanizer himself, and he got dissatisfied with his wife. There were other women around. They were separated often. They were unhappy with each other. She was very unhappy coming from Sydney to be stuck in Hobart, Tasmania, which was, even for Australians, the end of the world.
Errol adored his father. He'd be away quite a lot, which was sad because apparently his mother was not a good mum to him.
He had a love-hate relationship with his mother all his life. You know, she would try to impose on him certain points of behavior, and yet she didn't always follow them herself. I mean, she apparently had a couple of affairs here and there, and this affected him, I think, because he loved his father so much. To have her being out cheating on his father, I think that affected his relationship with women for the rest of his life.
Errol, get out! Do you hear me? Get out!
He was suspicious of women, and I think he felt he had to try to dominate them so that they couldn't hurt him the way she did, including physical harm when he was a little boy. He was a very engaging little chap when he was a boy. You know, he's just very handsome, very charming, and very cute, and very lively, and very naughty. And, I mean, how could you not like a little boy who was like that? You don't want him to be a tame, goody-goody little church-going milquetoast. His mother wasn't, and certainly his father wasn't.
Probably not surprising, then, that he was always in trouble at school, expelled from everyone he attended, from kindergarten to high school. In Hobart, they still remember him.
He was very good-looking, tall. I think a couple of our female teachers were in love with him. A bit of a devil in him, of course.
His formal education over at 16, Errol moved to Sydney to live with his grandparents and fell in with a young society set. He was the most charming, but also the poorest. There were half-hearted attempts at finding employment, but hard work was never his strong point. For now, he could survive on good looks alone.
He's discovered on the beach by Chauvel and gets involved for 5 or 6 weeks with movie making. Maybe only 3 weeks, come to think of it, in which they did The Wake of the Bounty.
On the set of one of Australia's first talking pictures, a legend was about to be stillborn.
I want you to forget that you're Errol Flynn. Instead, that you're Fletcher Christian, leader of a mutiny, facing a desperate band of men. All right, we'll make a take this time. Action!
Aye, but unfortunately we cannot escape from ourselves, nor from our own contempt.
Errol's movie debut failed to impress, but he hardly cared. He had other plans in mind.
The future holds the most awful adventure of all.
From his childhood, Errol had watched the sailing ships in Hobart's bays and dreamt of a life at sea. He badgered his family for loans and eventually had enough to buy a weather-beaten schooner, the Sirocco. Though he had little sailing experience, in 1930, Errol and 3 friends set out for a dangerous 6-month voyage from Sydney to New Guinea.
I went to New Guinea in the first gold rush, and I think I was 18. In fact, I was. I went up there, and I was running a small boat for a living. And I took some people up a place called the Seabrick River, which was a horrible place. And there was so many mosquitoes you couldn't see your way through them. We came pretty quickly to call it the Septic River, and it was certainly that. You've got ulcers, mosquitoes, every other darn thing.
Errol's accounts of his various trips to New Guinea over the next 4 years are notoriously unreliable. What's clear is that honest attempts to make his fortune soon took a darker path.
He was doing semi-illegal things. He seemed to be trading in copra and diamonds and rare bird feathers and tobacco. He was running a plantation. He was even black slaving. Incredible to think of it, going into the bush and capturing these black guys and somehow handing them over to some indentured labor. The total of all this is a quite astonishing practical experience in the wild world.
In this untamed frontier, Errol pledged himself to a life without restraint.
We fritter our lives away in detail, but I'm not going to do this. I'm going to live deeply. I'm going to front the essentials of life, to see if I can learn what it has to teach, and above all, not to discover when I come to die that I have not lived.
Flynn left New Guinea with little more to show for it than malaria and a dose of gonorrhea. Back in Depression-era Sydney, he was penniless, and there were no jobs to be found, but he wouldn't be staying long.
The wife of a department store executive was giving a party, and she wanted some young people to jazz up the party, and so Errol was sent along with others to jazz up the party. Within a week, he was in bed with her, and he stole her jewels. The best evidence I have is probably diamonds, but some accounts say pearls. But the police were on his trail after that, and he was moving very fast from that time on.
Never to set foot in Australia again, Errol fled back to New Guinea, and there met a man who would change his life, a mysterious Austrian doctor, Hermann Erben.
Erben was a vagabond. He was in a lot of ways a ne'er-do-well. He was a braggart. He was not a terribly honest man. But there's something about him that Errol was instantly attracted to. Errol, of course, was the much younger man. Erben was considerably older than Errol. And you get the feeling, for instance, when you read through Errol's letters to Erben, that he was very interested in impressing Erben. In fact, Errol later on said that that was the one lasting friendship, his friendship with Hermann Erben, that he had had in his whole life.
Together, they toured the brothels and opium dens of Asia, Erben always encouraging Errol's reckless side. They would stay friends for 20 years. Flynn now had dreams of becoming an actor, and for that, there was just one place to be. Errol was 25 when he set sail for Hollywood, and he didn't even have to get off the boat to make his mark. On board, he caught the eye of a successful French actress, Lily Damita.
Lily comes when you stop to call her. Lily runs when you look away.
Well, he's dazzled. She's beautiful. She's French. She's famous. She's rich. She's crazy about him. She's a little older. And she does a lot for him.
He said she was meant for me.
You see pictures of the two of them together, and you recall comments, for example, Vincent Price said that when he first saw Lily Damita and Errol Flynn in Hollywood, there was no other couple like them. They were absolutely astonishing. She was ravishing, and he was incredibly handsome, and they made an extremely handsome couple. They did have tremendous magnetism.
Thousands of people come to the motion picture capital each year to see the sights, and the famous names of famous places are as well known to your Aunt Minnie as the grocery store back home.
Hollywood in the 1930s was a small, incestuous town where a few connections could go a long way. Lily was well established with the European emigres who filled important jobs at the studios. It got Errol in through the gate at Warner Brothers.
We'd better go straight to the casting office, where each new hopeful who hopes to be a movie star waits his or her turn.
Many would later claim credit for discovering Errol Flynn. But somehow, studio boss Jack Warner was convinced to take a huge risk in casting an unknown in the biggest film of 1935. If only we could all have such a beginning.
It was a huge gamble, but nobody to this day realizes how big a gamble Jack Warner made when he cast Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland being put into the biggest budget picture of a career for one of the major studios. And nobody since, I don't think, has made that kind of impression in a first film as Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland did. I mean, it was stupendous. He was a star overnight. In fact, it's said that he attended the premiere with his wife, Lily Demita, and she was in tears afterwards. And somebody came up and said, "Why are you in tears? He's a success. He's wonderful." And she said, "I know. This day I have lost my husband." That was the beginning of Errol Flynn, superstar.
All right, my hearties, follow me! It's Errol Flynn as Robin Hood. It's Errol Flynn in his greatest role.
Over the next 2 years, Errol made half a dozen films that rocketed him into the stratosphere as the biggest star in Hollywood.
You'll not take her while I live. Then I'll take her when you're dead.
He looked so athletic that he looked good. He could ride a horse like you wouldn't believe, could swim, fence, dance box, name it. He could do it.
In their new home high above Sunset Boulevard, Errol and Lily literally had Hollywood at their feet. The perfect couple, living a dream. But behind the beautiful images, a typhoon was brewing.
He was evidently having affairs from the very beginning. You wonder at times why he married Lily.
You know, it's amazing he didn't put an axe through her head, you know, for the time they were together. I mean, she was very exciting. He said she was, you know, very sexy and they had a good sex life. But they just couldn't get on. You know, they were too temperamentally incompatible, too hostile.
She used to crash dishes on his head or flower pots on his head. He said in his book, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, I often think of Lily Demita whenever I think of the hole she left in my head.
To escape from Lily, Errol exchanged one war zone for another.
Errol, you're leaving tonight on a new trip, aren't you?
Yes, flying to New York in an hour, and then I sail for Europe. I hope to get a look at the Spanish War, and on the way home, perhaps spend a few weeks in South America.
When Spain erupted in civil war in 1936, Errol sensed an adventure he couldn't resist.
A lot of his motivation always is boredom. He gets bored easily, and life is boring, and he wants to do something different that would be exciting. It's risky going to Spain to a war in the way that it's not risky making films in Hollywood. And he's the only Hollywood actor that I know of who went to Spain.
Well, I don't think I quite realized what it was going to be like. Anyway, I know now what it is to hear shells exploding over your head and machine gun bullets whining past. Believe me, it's pretty frightening. But of all the horrible things I saw down there, I was convinced of one thing, and that is that the only cause in the world today worth fighting for, and that every man and woman should fight for, is the cause of peace.
It was the beginning of a surprising political awareness. The Spanish conflict was seen by many as a preview of the coming war against fascism, and Errol wanted the world to know. He'd been writing small stories for newspapers since his New Guinea days, and Spain was a chance to prove himself as a serious writer.
Errol was really a frustrated war correspondent. He wanted to be where the action was. He wanted to be a neutral observer as much as he could. He wanted to write it all down. He wanted to be a published writer. That was a big part of Errol Flynn. He wanted to be a writer. That was huge within him. In fact, that overshadowed everything else for a long time.
Errol's articles were keenly observed and undoubtedly serious. But he made a grave error in taking along his mysterious friend.
He had Herman Urban there as his photographer, and I am convinced the only reason he had him there, apart from the fact that they both loved adventure, was because he hoped to use those photographs that Urban was taking to illustrate these articles.
These photos look innocent, but many of these men would later be persecuted by the Nazis.
There's no question in my mind that he did not know that Urban would later turn those photos over to the headquarters in Berlin, and those would be used, sadly, against some of the people that Urban had photographed in Spain.
There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that Errol knew his quixotic friend was a Nazi. Urban was Jewish, yet was also a Nazi Party member and an amateur spy. Flynn's Spanish escapade lasted little more than a week, but long after his death, it would be used to slur his reputation. A poorly researched book claimed he knew of Urban's spy mission and was anti-Semitic. Errol was guilty of many sins, which he freely admitted, but not that.
Errol knew I was Jewish. I never heard him make a remark about anybody else's religion. I think that he just didn't care whether you were black or white or green or yellow or what.
On his return from Spain, Errol resumed his reign as Hollywood's leading romantic male. The Tasmanian devil was now the biggest star on Earth.
I love you and you love me, darling.
Well, I don't want to love you.
You can't help yourself, darling.
Can't I?
No, you're sunk.
Am I?
He was so successful. At one point, I think he was the highest priced actor on the lot. He was making more than Bogart or any of them. He was the guy whose bullet always went straight to the villain, and he came out victor. But Flynn was a big star when Bogart was just creeping along.
Now rich beyond measure, Errol lived it large. It was every man's dream. Women apparently found him irresistible.
Women chased him. He really did not chase women.
His marriage with Lily, always fiery, was now turning toxic. While his career was rising, hers was in decline, and his insatiable womanizing left her bitter and vengeful. After 7 years of hurt, she launched a vicious divorce battle, which she continued even through her pregnancy with their son, Sean.
She took everything until the day he died. You know, she hounded him and took him to court many times, got one of the most incredible settlements, you know, and sued him every time he had a late payment. He was in court with her again. I mean, just relentless.
To escape, up on Mulholland Drive, Errol built his 10-acre estate. The ultimate bachelor pad, part farm, part Playboy mansion, eventually even a family home.
He designed Mulholland. It was spectacular. It was designed for entertaining. There was a lot of wild parties up there. You know, Errol would have, a lot of shenanigans going on up there, you know.
Flynn would combine the utmost in gentility, tails and ties and formal attire, along with the most bizarre sorts of games, both sexual and otherwise. Nudity, even some orgies.
There was a staircase that led to the attic. And there was a little platform where you could actually walk over and look down, and who was ever in the bedroom, you could see.
At Mulholland, Errol cultivated both sides of his nature, the feckless risk-taker and the cultured, art-loving writer. He felt increasingly foolish being typecast as a film adventurer, but the studio wasn't interested in giving him more serious roles.
He really hated Jack Warner for keeping him in tights, as he used to say. He just didn't like doing that after a while. You know, it gave him a start, but enough is enough, and he wanted to do other things, and then he wanted to write. He was serious about it, and he had a definite talent for it.
Errol wrote 2 books in these years. Be Men's, an account of his early days in New Guinea, not a bad read, and Showdown, another adventure novel. And later came his notorious and hugely successful autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways. But unlike acting, where all he had to do was turn up and look beautiful, writing never came easily.
I find that the pangs of writing are harder than acting, and when I reread it the other day, I almost vomited.
By the waters of the Caribbean lives a lovely little Latin queen. In her bathing suit she can be seen.
When not playing the pained writer, Errol indulged himself in the one constant of his life, sailing. His glamorous yachts, the Sirocco and later the Zaka, became his true passion, which he was always willing to share.
Never got wet. There on the sand was a fella, and he had the biggest umbrella.
Flynn was constantly having women throw themselves at him, literally swimming up to his yacht and just climbing up the ladder naked, without their birth certificate or driver's license that he could use to ascertain their exact age. So if a woman offered herself to Flynn, as indeed if they offered herself to you or me, you're very likely to be strongly tempted.
In August 1941, Errol took the Sirocco out for another glorious day of sailing and fun. On board was a Life magazine photographer and a pretty model. Peggy Satterley was just 15, although she wasn't telling anyone, least of all Errol. What happened between them may never have been a matter of much interest until a year later, when another aspiring teenage actress, Betty Hansen, claimed Errol had sex with her at a Hollywood party. Long after the alleged events, Errol became caught up in a struggle between the studios and corrupt LA police.
It's sad that Warner Brothers was not doing their payoffs to the local police, the local district attorney, which was part of the whole studio system at that time to keep these celebrities out of the front pages. Warner Brothers had fallen behind in their payoffs, and the district attorney at the time decided to make an example not only of Errol Flynn but of the entire studio system. Look, if you don't make your payoffs, this is what's going to happen.
Errol was charged with the statutory rape of 2 underage girls. Every day the trial was attended by swarms of fainting female fans. He protested his innocence, but he couldn't hide the strain. If convicted, he faced a long jail term.
Well, it was clear that he was very, very disturbed by this. He was probably drinking more, and he was trying to curtail that at the same time because he had to go to court every day and he had to perform. And that was clearly the most important performance of his life.
Errol had the great celebrity attorney of the day, Jerry Giesler. Giesler stacked the jury with sympathetic women and set out to destroy the reputations of the two teenagers.
The sexual background of these two women was allowed as admissible evidence, and their character was so defamed that their testimony was more or less considered invalid by the jury.
The prosecution was forced to admit that, yes, these girls had been brought up on charges of their own. Peggy Satterley had an illegal abortion, and Betty Hansen was charged with a crime against nature.
When Betty Hansen took the stand and testified that Flynn had taken off her clothes, Giesler saw his chance to attack. He thundered at her, "Didn't you want him to take them off?"
I didn't have no objections.
In Hollywood, Errol Flynn has gone free. A jury of 9 women and 3 men has found him not guilty. And that's the world today.
Errol was elated. Peggy Satterley was left broken, as angry with the police as she was with Flynn.
I hate him more than anyone else in the world. I'm just 2 days short of 17, and I feel like a broken old woman. I wish those police had left me out of it.
The trial for Flynn was the worst sort of thing that could have happened, because here was a man who was held up as a hero to youth. He played some of the most important figures in cultural history. He played the magnanimous, heroic pirate. He played Robin Hood. He played the selfless soldier leading his troops on an almost certainly fatal charge. And for Flynn to have sort of abrogated all those possible roles for himself when the rape trial came about had to take a terrific toll on him. That had to weigh very heavily on him when he saw that the only thing left to him after that was a sort of ridicule.
It seemed to me that there comes a time in a man's life when perhaps he needs a little discipline. Self-discipline, that is.
Discipline was never exactly Errol's great strength. Even as the trial was in progress, he had a teenage Mexican actress smuggled across the border. Linda Christian was hidden from view up at Mulholland Farm.
I believe she was underage also at the time, like 17 and a half. And friends said to him, "Errol, you're on trial, and yet you're fooling around with Linda Christian at the same time." And he said, "Oh, nobody knows about Linda Christian. I smuggled her in. She's up in my house." This is the ultimate risk-taking on the part of Errol. It just shows he would really do anything and didn't care.
When he tired of Linda, he turned his hungry eye elsewhere. During the trial, Errol had noticed a young girl. Nora Eddington was just 18.
The first time I saw him, when I walked into the house, he was sitting by the pool. And I never saw anyone so beautiful in my life as the way he looked. He was all tan, and he had on his white topsiders and the white slacks, and he was bare on top, and he was so tan, and his hair had turned golden. And with these green eyes, how could you not find this man attractive?
Errol had always made it clear that he was not the marrying kind. When Nora fell pregnant after their first night together, he delayed the inevitable as long as possible.
He married her only at the very moment that she was delivering, in the very last days of her pregnancy, and they went on to have 2 children together.
It's one of the many paradoxes of Errol Flynn that he could embody both playboy and devoted father.
He was very much a part of our lives when we were growing up. He taught me to ride, helped me with my swimming, with my horses. I mean, I learned so much just watching him ride horses, watching him swim. He was a hell of a father, that's all I can say.
We had Sean a lot, and his mother, Lily, Felt a man should be in his life. So she was really happy to send him to Mulholland 3 months of the year so my dad could be with him. So my dad got a lot of quality time with his kids for about 7 years.
Errol would have 4 children to 3 wives. They came to embody both the serious and the sad side of his nature. The eldest, Sean, disappeared while working as a war photographer in Vietnam. The youngest, Arnella, died after a long struggle with drugs and alcohol. Their father's own addictions came to dominate the last decade of his life.
Achtung! Attention! 5 dangerous commandos are loose in the fatherland, and they must be caught. They are too dangerous to live.
Sir! They're all around, back and front. Any side doors or windows?
None that they can uncover. The roof.
When America entered World War II, Errol's sword was replaced with a pistol, but he felt ridiculous play acting while men and women were fighting for real.
There was a lot of public mirth. This great hero of the films, he doesn't do anything. He just sits in his high Hollywood mansion and seduces girls while other people are going out and dying for real in real uniforms and that sort of thing. I think that cut into him deeply.
Now at what is commonly known and otherwise as Warner Brothers Studios, I want you to know Miss Ann Sheridan.
Everyone else, it seems, was in uniform, even Jack Warner, but not Errol. He'd applied for every branch of the services but been rejected. The studio was hiding a dark secret. Its star had tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis kept him out of the army, but it also, he didn't want people knowing because here he is, the healthiest hero, jumping from fence to fence and boat to boat, and he has tuberculosis. Doesn't sound right.
Errol's list of illnesses included an enlarged heart and recurring bouts of malaria. He also suffered from chronic back problems and relied on morphine and then heroin to dull the pain. The virile hero of the screen was in fact a physical wreck.
Some people who knew him well say that he was terrified of the fact that he had had several heart attacks as a very young man and that he might die early, and he was trying to pack as much living as he could into his lifetime.
Still not even 40, Errol felt he was wasting his time playing heroes. The studio was unwilling to vary the predictable diet of sword fights and damsels in distress.
All my life I seem to have been stumbling around as if in darkness. I am no longer.
Silence! You have no right to speak to me that way. I forbid you.
Errol could still sell tickets, but success as a swashbuckler meant nothing to him. His friend and director Vincent Sherman believes his talent was greatly underestimated.
He resented the fact that he was never really considered by other actors as being a good actor. I said, Errol, what the hell do you care? You can do things that no other actor can do. He says, like what? And I said, well, you wear a costume as though you were right for that period. I said, and it looks real. And I said, and other people can't even wear a costume. He said, what the hell does that mean? Nothing.
Increasingly, he filled the void with prodigious drinking and a growing dependence on heroin.
I don't know why he got into drugs, who knows? Disappointments, maybe, in himself, insecurity. Or maybe something just as simple as, oh, I can do this and it won't affect me. But it did, you know, because he tried everything. He really did try. There was nothing that he didn't try. That was an adventure to him. And it got to him.
Nora couldn't stand the pain of seeing him destroy himself, and after 6 difficult years, she left.
His drinking had a lot to do with it, and other things had added up, and I was very young, and I couldn't take too much of a lot of things.
Makeup could no longer disguise Errol's hard living, and he planned to quit Hollywood altogether.
I just can't picture myself a broken-down actor running around begging for jobs. No, sir, when I'm through, I'll be on my way, without regrets.
Taking the Zaka to Europe, he went into self-imposed exile. New life, new wife. In October 1950, he married a young actress, Patrice Wymore, in Monaco. Together they would live a gypsy existence. If he worked, Errol preferred to be as far from Hollywood as possible. He went in search of new amusements, read widely, spent wildly, uncaring of the consequences.
He didn't have any interest in the business side of his life, so he just sort of signed everything over to his lawyer, his accountant, his agent. He'd be traveling around Europe, he'd be on the boat, he'd be out of touch. In some ways it was necessary to give somebody the legal authority. But when he got off the boat and went back to America and found out, asked for a statement and asked for what he found that he had nothing, that everybody had stolen from him, and he had nothing left.
Millions of dollars had simply disappeared. Perhaps the hardest blow came in the final act of his bitter fight with Lily Damita. When he missed alimony payments, she took away his beloved Mulholland farm and sold it just to spite him. Once it had all come so easily, and now it so easily slipped away.
It's a very simple game. One of our three guests is a well-known celebrity. And it's
Desperate for money, Errol was reduced to bad films and self-parody in TV comedies.
What is your name, please?
My name is Errol Flynn.
And what is your name, please?
My name is Errol Flynn.
He became what he once feared, a broken-down actor begging for jobs.
My name is Errol Flynn.
The films were few and far between now, and most of them forgettable.
Errol Flynn is red hot in hell hot Havana.
Where did you get the money?
Every day between 2 and 4, I stand outside the dog track with a tin cup.
As always, he was restless, and he and Patrice separated. Errol seemed destined to be forgotten until Jack Warner threw him a lifeline by calling him back to Hollywood. It would be the best work of his career, playing a role that really came naturally.
The last three major roles that Flynn had were as drunks. And he used to say, well, it wasn't acting, I was just playing myself. Somebody once said, the face that you grow into is the face you deserve. Well, I think Flynn would agree to that, except he would say the role you develop into is the role you deserve.
Dad, is that you?
Don't you come near me. Oh, God. I'm warning you!
Oh, please, Dad, put it down.
I'll put it down. I'll put it down and smoke!
Flynn was absolutely convincing in Too Much, Too Soon, a sad tale of decline. Then he stole the show in Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises. Finally free of the costumes and forced heroics, Errol emerged from his dark years as a critically acclaimed actor.
Errol, the last picture in which we saw you was The Sun Also Rises. And even critics who had not liked you before said that you were wonderful.
Well, if the critics said that, you know, it's a kind word in a hard, cruel world.
News has just come through from Hollywood that you've been nominated for an Academy Award.
Yes, isn't that something? I never thought it'd happen to me.
Sadly for Errol, it was still a hard, cruel world. On the verge of recognition at last, his nomination for the Oscar was mysteriously withdrawn. While working on the Warner lot, Errol's wandering eye caught sight of a pretty chorus line dancer. He was 48. Beverly Adland was 15. She was the last and, strangely, the happiest love of his life.
Slowly, your kisses awake me, and once again I start to live. Kisses so young and so tender, just like a dream from mist.
Beverly's mother had thrown her in front of the cameras from childhood. She was a leg model for Playboy at 14, and already singing and dancing in Vegas shows before she met the aging actor. They thumbed their nose at convention, and for the next 2 years were almost inseparable.
For us, for the love that you and I have in our hearts.
He was clearly infatuated with her. It's a strange word to use, I think, for a man going on 50 years old. Infatuated, that's something you think about in terms of teenagers, but you get the feeling at points that he almost had a crush on her.
A dress designer at Warner Brothers came to me and told me that Errol wanted me to go out to dinner with him. I said yes. Let me call my mother.
It's hard to understand how, with that age difference, you could have much of a meeting of minds, but I don't think at that point Errol Flynn was interested in a meeting of minds. In fact, one of the things he liked to say about younger women is they're great. You don't have to listen to them when they talk.
We really did get along. He asked me to marry him about 3 months later.
They made their home in Jamaica, where Errol had won a hotel and a card came. He began building an estate that he intended to be his final home. In the garden, he started work on his notorious memoirs, but he was not yet ready to fade away. There was time for one last amazing adventure. Errol had always enjoyed Cuba. Its lively casinos and readily available drugs made it a home from home. In 1958, as the Batista dictatorship stumbled through its final hours, he and Beverly went to Havana. In theory, he was there to perform in his last and most curious movie.
Hi, folks. I don't know what it is about me that I just don't seem to be able to keep out of fights. But this Cuban Revolution is about as tough a one as I'll ever want.
Well, now that I'm a rebel girl, I think I'll think about war, too.
Not a chance.
Well, it was about an American girl going to Cuba to find her boyfriend. Basically, I end up having to run around in a uniform.
The film was little more than a distraction from Errol's real aim, a last attempt to write something of importance.
I represented the Hearst Press and had been commissioned to do a series of articles on the rebel leader, Fidel Castro, which in itself was fine, but the question was, how could I get to him?
With the help of a friend, producer Victor Palin, Errol stepped out of his acting role and began making a documentary about the dramatic events swirling around him.
The phenomena was so amazing
that they were drawn in. It's always a fascinating invitation to be at a moment where history changes, at the vortex of change, as long as your head doesn't get chopped off in the process.
I was to land in a predetermined grass strip near the mountains. I had then been picked up by a carrier plane and flown to headquarters. There was certainly no turning back from this point.
He wrote a will when he was going up in the hills, and that did scare the hell out of me. And I remember crying and being all upset about it.
It's really kind of interesting that he'd be willing to go into the bush to find Fidel. I mean, nobody thought Fidel was going to win. I mean, it was Fidel and his guerrillas against the Cuban army. Nobody quite realized how rotten the regime was and how easily it could topple.
On the very day that Batista fled the capital, Errol finally made contact with Fidel Castro in his mountain headquarters, scooping all the world's top reporters to the story.
They got on, and he was coaching Fidel on how to give speeches, which Fidel needed to know. He had not given speeches before that.
The legacy of this strange affair where the movie star met the revolutionary is a film that's very Errol. Cuban Story.
Hi, everyone. Excuse me, it's a little hot in here. But wait till you see what I'm going to show you. You'll get hot, too. This is the island of Cuba. It may be small, but recently it's grown very big in the hearts of men who love liberty and humanity the world over. And there is one particular man I want to tell you about who stood before them all, called Fidel Castro. Well, I think we can get rid of this now. You see,
At one point, at the beginning of Cuban Story, he picks up a globe and said, "Oh, well, here's the world, and it's shrinking," and he tosses it away, and you can hear it bouncing in the background. You know, my goodness. Didn't he know he was being filmed at the time? Well, that's Errol Flynn. I mean, basically, I don't think he cared to the day he died what people thought of him.
Cuban Story showed once in Moscow and was never seen again. Gripped by Cold War hysteria, America was not yet ready for a Hollywood legend openly espousing revolution.
well, I guess this about winds up another stage in the fight to rid Latin America of tyrants, dictators. But the spirit started by this handful of wonderful rebels is spreading and growing stronger every day. And to all you young men and women fighting for political freedom and your own beliefs everywhere, I wish you good luck.
Errol returned to Los Angeles, staying in hotels while awaiting job offers that never came, and hoping no one asked for Beverly's driver's license.
When he came back to Hollywood, he was non-hireable. He was drinking. He was known as, being pretty much an alcoholic. His ex-wife was taking every penny he had. I think that he might have at one point counted on somebody to help bail him out of a situation, but nobody came through for him.
As the creditors circled, he was forced to take the hardest decision of all. He had to sell his beloved yacht, the Zaka. For years, the graceful schooner had been his sanctuary. Like his looks and his liver and his fortune, now it too was going. He headed to Vancouver to discuss terms with a potential buyer.
Basically, in Vancouver, We were only there for like 4 days. He was limping, and the doctor gave him a shot for pain. And so I said, "You want to lay down on the floor?" He had taken his jacket off, and I put it over him. He looked a little chilly. And leaned over to kiss him, and he just felt cold all over. I remember screaming, and 911 arrived. They worked on him about 45 minutes, and they came out, and they said, "I'm sorry, he's dead."
Errol Flynn was just 50 years old when he died. The coroner's report said it was a massive heart attack, but he noted that all the major organs were diseased. Beverly was warned to keep away from the funeral. Lily dared not show her face. Despite his wish to be buried in Jamaica, Patrice, still legally his wife, had him interred above Hollywood, the place he'd come to despise. Jack Warner begrudgingly gave a few employees the morning off to attend.
When we arrived, I saw on the outside rows of empty benches. And they thought there would be a big crowd there, an overflow crowd. Anyway, the benches were empty when we arrived, and when we left, the benches were still empty. Somebody said Errol would be so disappointed. I said, like hell he would. And he had a certain kind of contempt for publicity and crowds. It didn't mean a damn thing, he said. And he was right. While he was on top and everything was going great, they were all for him. The minute he began to slip, they disappointed him.
He was one of a kind. And I think it'll be a long time before you see anything similar to him, if ever.
He was a giant. There are no giants today. Because there is nobody today who could do what he did.
Wasn't I a nasty character? Wasn't I horrible? Oh, well. Goodbye now.
Like him, whoa, and wrong. I will give everything just to be like him. Tell me it's true. I don't want to hear about it. No, tell me it's true. But I don't want to hear about it.
How do you feel more sinned against than sinning?
Sir, I resent that question.
No, I contributed.
And I've had a hell of a lot of fun. I loved it, every minute of it.
I will give everything.